of the Church of Nigeria Anglican Communion, the Most Reverend Nicholas Oko is asking the federal government to intensify its efforts in improving security in the country. The cleric, who was speaking in Abuja, acknowledges that security has improved in some parts of the country, particularly in areas besieged by Boko Haram terrorists. He, however, says the federal government must not relent in ensuring that Nigerians in every part of the country are safe and secure.
There has always been one lapse or the other in any human situation. But I think it has improved because if you remember the state of Boko Haram, that to come to church was a problem. Bombs were exploding at bus stations and everywhere. But today, we have gathered here now, we are not afraid. So I think reasonably, you can say it has improved. If you have followed, I have maintained one statement. The government of the day has the sole responsibility to maintain security. That's the meaning of election. They took away all our powers. We handed them over to the people in government with the promise that they will look after us. So we call upon them to look after us, to maintain security, so that people who travel on the roads, people who are sleeping in their homes will be secure.
The national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Adams Oshiomhole, believes that the challenge with Nigeria's growth and development will not be addressed by constitutional changes, but attitudinal and values reorientation. He told Channels Television's Lade Akeredoluale on our current affairs program, Newsnight, that those currently bringing up the debate on restructuring are ethnic champions.
The problem we have is that if you have a little issue, our only prescription is repeal and return to the past, to where we are coming from. If that past was good, why did you change it? So that's why I speak to what I say as more confusion, a lot of heat, very little light. I think that we need to be more constructive in looking at our crisis. We do have very serious crises. Some that we do need to tackle them decisively. But we will only be able to do so if we focus on them as a people, not as people talking as if it is about they and us, we and them, and creating all kinds of artificial divide. And then an argument that can benefit from serious objective analysis of prescription, diagnosis, and solutions. You'll find that it is hijacked by ethnic champions who approach everything from ethnic perspective. I think we can do a lot more to revisit our core values, our attitude.
The full interview comes up later tonight at 9 p.m. only on Channels Television. Well, let's discuss some of the national issues that reared its head over the weekend, which is also spilling into this week. We're discussing with our guests who are in our Abuja studios, Ndi Kato, social commentator, and also we have Mr. Aliyu Lemu, a lawyer and public affairs analyst. Glad you could join us this holiday. Thank you. Let's start with security. I mean, you heard the Anglican Primate, Reverend Oko, say that government took away all our powers with the promise that they'll look after us in providing security. Perhaps I should ask you, Mr. Lemu, have they let us down? Do you think they've done their best?
Well, seeing the video of the Anglican Primate queue up gave me some satisfaction. What he said is the absolute truth. We practice a democracy in Nigeria, and democracy is a social contract whereby citizens surrender their rights to the government, invest the coercive powers of the state in government in exchange for the security of their lives and properties. The 1999 Constitution, from which the government of the day derives its power, has a section called Fundamental Objectives and Directives of State Policy, which in essence means the government is founded on those principles. Section 13 of the Constitution provides that it shall be the responsibility of all the organs of government and persons exercising executive, legislative, and judicial powers of the state to achieve the objectives of that chapter of the Constitution. Section 14 provides that sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, from whom the government, through the Constitution, derives its power. The powers wielded by the state, the powers invested by the state, are donated to the state and the government by the people of Nigeria.
The area of security, have they let us down?
Coming to that point, Section 14, subsection 2 provides that the welfare and security of the citizens of Nigeria shall be the primary responsibility of government. We have to admit that there has been some minimal improvement compared to the days of the past, where people could not go to church or go to the mosque without bombs going off. But as it were, we are still confronted with several other security challenges, which the government needs to do more. The government needs to step up. I live in the federal capital, but every time we drive in a state of fear, the state is sometimes over-militarized. Police checkpoints everywhere, custom officers on the highway, everywhere on the streets.
So, Mr. Lemo, you're saying the answer to that question is yes and no. Let's find out from Ndi Kato. What are your thoughts? Security as it is now, are you happy?
Of course not. I've lived in Abuja since '93, and there was a point where we did witness, really improved security in Abuja. There was actually a time in Abuja where kidnapping was really high, and then we came down to this point. That's armed robbery, I would say. But here we are again. People are getting missing. I think we've forgotten that case with Domino's, where girls were taken I think last year or upper year. People can't travel to neighboring states anymore. And then when I watch the clip, I always look at these clips and say, wow, there's a certain tyranny and selfishness of those of us who live in urban areas to say things are fine because we are fine. But people in the rural areas are not fine. Mosques and churches are still getting attacked in these places. People are still being killed in their numbers. And we should keep in mind that we are the minority. That is us urban dwellers. Nigeria is primarily a poor country. And so it means that a great number of Nigerians are still suffering under insecurity. So for me, it's a loud no. I don't think we're safer. And I would discourage people who live in urban areas who think that, oh, everything is fine just because I no longer have to barricade the front of my church. It's a very wrong message. And I saw that.
And Mr. Lemo, we're going to come back to continue the discussion. We just have a few more things to talk about. I mean, there is STERAP on the security votes. There's also restructuring. We'll be talking about this when we return. Still to come also on the program. Welcome back. Just before we continue with our discussion, let's bring you some of the stories in brief. And President Buhari has met with the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Most Reverend and Right Honourable Justin Welby. They both met at the Lambeth Palace, London. The President has been in the UK since November the 2nd on a private visit after attending a Saudi investment forum late October. We continue with the discussion with our guest, Ndi Kato, social commentator, Mr. Aliyu Lemo, lawyer and public affairs analyst. I'd like to begin with you, Mr. Lemo, and that is on the security vote. STERAP has come out to say that the world needs to know, Nigerians need to know what 241.2 billion naira was disbursed as security votes, what happened to it in the last 20 years. Is that a right that you expect as well?
Yes, I do. I believe so. Part of the corollary to exercising executive powers is the right to account to the people who have invested those powers in the governors and the various elective officers. Over the years, since we started our democracy experiment, the security votes are not being accounted for, and it has become an avenue where governors and other elected officials divert public resources to their personal use without accounting for them. Every month, you see that the sums being assigned for security votes are much higher than the sums that are meant for developmental projects. Sums that will be better expended on expenditure are being diverted to personal purses under the guise of security vote. I think the time to account is now. I think the move by STERAP to demand for accountability through the avenue of the court is a most welcome development.
So I must ask you this, 2 in 1, and that is your thoughts on the security votes. Do you think that, SERAP would succeed? And this is for, of course, the world to know exactly what these monies are used for. And I must also ask you, with regards to restructuring, the debate has come up every now and again, but the national chairman says he admits that we have a serious problem, but he says that it's been hijacked by ethnic champions. Briefly.
Okay, so with respect to security votes, I'll just touch it briefly because he has touched on it. I think it's an accountability issue again, and it's a jamboree for government officials to just jump on knowing that nobody's going to ask questions about it. But I need SERAP to take a step forward, or all of us to take a step forward, because if we're talking about these issues and people at the rural areas are not connected, they tend to get away with it. So we need to lean into some of the work that some CSOs are doing to get people at the rural areas emotionally invested in issues concerning where their money is spent. And as soon as they start paying attention to this, I noticed with the work that Follow the Money is doing that these people actually step up. And we do need to find out. It's just that we're not paying enough attention. So with what Adams Oshomole was saying there, I always find it funny. I've been in politics and I realized that when it comes to restructuring, it depends on what angle or what place the politician is at that moment that he would have that conversation, or his own angle depends on what place he is. If a politician is in the opposition, he wants restructuring. Once he gets in there, something seems to change. And that's what I'm hearing from Adams Oshomole. The talk of ethnic champions and everything. This is a country that is completely heterogeneous. We have, my senatorial zone in Southern Kaduna has 53 tribes or more. And we have to come to the table and understand this. Again, the tyranny of the top 3 tribes, Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba. So many people do not come to the table when Nigeria is being discussed. So many issues are not brought up. And we need to consider restructuring, if not even for the tribal angle, it's for the fact that we need competitive growth in this nation. People are all dependent on one source of wealth, one source of survival. Some states are not performing at all, and this is with no insult. A state like Zamfara has enough for it to survive on its own, needs to build up on its own human capital. But by the time we come to this system of government that we're using now, it's not working. And it's very erroneous for him to say that, oh, the former system was not working before, that's why we came here. Most of these things were done by military officers, and we do know that Nigeria is in its present condition because of this. We cannot lean on what was done out of the Constitution, what was done by people who usurped government, and then lean on it and say this was the solution. It was not democratic at all. And it's a shame that someone who is this involved at this level in democracy is leaning on that as a reason for us to continue with a very flawed system. Thank you, Madam Kato.
Finally, to you, Mr. Lemo, and that is, do you think we need a homemade constitution, an autochthonous constitution, rather than what we have? In 30 seconds.
Yes, I agree with you. I think we need a new constitution. The constitution we have is not a free will of the people. The constitution itself is a lie. The preamble to the constitution provides that we, the people of Nigeria, having resolved, in quote, to live in peace and harmony, hereby bestow unto ourselves this constitution. But that in itself is a lie. The people of Nigeria never sat and agreed that this is the constitution they want to adopt for themselves. The military, through their military decrees and enactments, set up a panel, drafted the constitution, adopted the constitution, and foisted that on the people of Nigeria. I think the time is now and the time is right for us to have a constitutional conference whereby the various interest groups in Nigeria have the opportunity of sitting down, amending this constitution and making it a homegrown constitution, providing solutions that are peculiar to Nigeria and Nigerians.
I'd like to appreciate your time. Indicator, social commentator, Mr. Leo Lemo, a lawyer, human public affairs analyst. Thank you for talking to us. Now, Muslim faithful around the world are commemorating the birthday of Prophet Muhammad, and in the spirit of the celebration, President Muhammadu Buhari is asking Muslim faithfuls to honor the Prophet Muhammad by following his shining examples of non-violence, peaceful disposition, and remarkable virtues of patience. In a goodwill message, President Buhari says, putting into practice the great virtues for which the Holy Prophet Muhammad is historically famous and revered would have a far greater impact on changing our attitudes and behaviors than the best sermons ever will. The president also highlights the devastating impact of extremism on the religion as he advises Muslims not to allow their children to be lured and recruited by extremists. According to the president, violent extremism is the single biggest challenge facing the image of Islam today, which has been hijacked by a minority of misguided elements who are using religion to cover up their criminal agenda. While wishing the Muslim Ummah a peaceful celebration, the president urged them to use this occasion to renew their resolve in promoting tolerance, love, harmony, and peaceful coexistence in the country.